Hey, it's Jay. I've mentioned that Columbo is a cop, right? Like, as much as he plays himself as an aw shucks everyman with a peripheral moral compass, at least when it comes to murderers, he's still a police officer, using manipulation tactics and unchecked power to get the result he wants. It's convenient that he's correct nearly every time, but there are a lot of times when he goes too far, and the murderer will complain about it to the superiors, and the superiors will immediately side with Columbo. Not even a mention of ethics violations, even when he is pulling nonsense like bringing in a fake eyewitness to trick the suspect into confessing. So, institutionally, Columbo's a bastard, but every once in a while he finds himself in conflict with other cops, because there's one thing he doesn't respect, it's the wall of silence. He may be one of them, but he's got his own ethereal code that trumps the thin blue line, and he will occasionally find himself facing off against the police. From least to most trouble he's in, here are the times that Columbo fought the law and somehow, inexplicably, won. In this movie, Columbo once again suspects an older movie star, this time the beautiful and talented Janet Leigh, of murdering her husband, which she did, because he refused to fund her comeback movie. People love this one, for good reason. The acting is great, there's a lot of Columbo's dog in this one, Columbo falls out of a tree, and also has a twist where our Mrs. DeMille here has a fatal disease that affects her memory, and she most likely doesn't even remember she did a murder. Also, she has maybe 2 months to live. So that's a downer, and we get a rare case where Columbo lets her get away with it when her former co-star confesses to the crime to tie up the investigation and let this poor woman who murdered her husband die in peace. It's a moving, emotional ending that brings up questions about what justice even is. Should someone be punished for something they have no knowledge of? Or how much control people with certain medical conditions actually have over their actions? But this video isn't about that. It's about the people downtown noticing that Columbo hasn't gone to the gun range in 5 years, and he's going to need to go in for recertification. You should know that Columbo doesn't like guns. Doesn't carry one, he has only fired a shot once, and it was into a sandbox, and will only take one if he absolutely has to, and he will bitch about it. So he really doesn't want to do this, and so he just doesn't. The head office isn't going to let him just forget it though, as a beat cop tracks him down and tells Columbo he has an appointment at 4, and when he doesn't go to that, Internal Affairs visits while he's giving his dog an ice cream cone and informs him that he will be going into the range or his badge is being pulled. Seems like he's stuck. What is a Columbo to do? Clearly he's going to have to suck it up and go in. Nope. He calls up one of his old buddies and sends that guy in his stead. And that's the end of it. Apparently this little subterfuge works and we never hear about it again. 1 point for Columbo. I'm not really sure why this is a big deal. Columbo doesn't carry a firearm, probably keeps his gun unloaded at home. He doesn't feel comfortable having the power to kill. He's very Batman like that. This is a tool enemy and so forth. Such as this next killer. Robert Culp is an ex-cop and the head of a private investigation firm that hires a bunch of stiff shirts. Very lucrative business, mainly because this guy does some shady stuff. Such as telling this newspaper mogul client that his wife definitely wasn't cheating on him while she was listening from the other room, then blackmailing her so she'll spy for him. She's a sharp one though, and does a little intimidating of her own by sneaking into his house and informing him that she's not going to give in and will tell her husband about her affair herself. This makes Robert Culp angry, and he slaps her into a glass table. After seeing the cover-up reflected in his eyeglasses in a cinematic flourish, Columbo appears, being pulled over for having a shitty car. This is the first appearance of Columbo's car, a 1979 Pidgeot 403 Cabriolet, and the joke is the car is bad. That's it. But they hit us with it a lot. Maybe too much. In a later entry, a good 5 minutes is devoted to his car not starting, and later we learn that he put 100,000 miles on it, and he's offered $80 for it in a trade-in. We get it. The car is comically shitty. The joke got really old by the time that Mrs. Columbo got around to telling it. Columbo doesn't have any leads because she has no enemies, and her husband had just been told she wasn't having an affair, but after meeting Culp and getting a vibe check on him, he checks out her golf instructor, discovering that she was definitely having an affair, and also Culp's goons has been tailing him. So he starts poking around the detective agency, finding them very high-tech and motivated. All of these jerks are strapped up and highly trained. He's got a fleet of company cars, and even a metal detector right outside his office. I do not know how he affords all this. Must be all the blackmailing he does. He has reports that Columbo's close, so he pulls him in for a fancy catered lunch and offers him a job, $30,000 a year. And you know Columbo ain't got no real money. You've seen his car. Columbo doesn't take the job offer, obviously, because he cannot be bought, and also because that's like only double his regular pay. You gotta sweeten the pot a little more, Bob. You got blackmail money. Columbo has a revelation at the DMV, though, as he realizes the victim was wearing contacts, which he can hammer on enough to trick Robert Culp to spend a long time freaking out trying to find the missing contact, even though there is, in fact, no contact missing. And also, maybe you put a potato in a tailpipe in order to trick the guy into breaking into a garage so he could be caught in a compromising position. Always curious when he decides he needs to just start lying and try to get the killer to do something stupid. This one took a bit of work. He had to go alone to the killer's house and provoke him, knowing full well he had a violent temper and is very good at disappearing evidence. He probably had his bases covered, but you know, still dangerous. He could have just killed you, Columbo. He's basically got a private army. Kathleen Colbert hates her cowboy husband Clifford because he's a bore and a lout and punches people at fancy parties just because they noticed he was doing real estate fraud. And she'd love to get rid of him and move on to her new boyfriend Patrick, but still wants to keep all the money. She just can't kill him because it would be too obvious. She would still be a suspect. Then she realizes if he was arrested for murder, that works out just as well for her, so she hatches a plan with her boyfriend to kill this tiny little man. Patrick sweet talks his way into the house and shoots the man, leaving behind a cigar cutting in the ashtray as misleading evidence. Then he returns to the scene of the crime in his official capacity as a forensic scientist with the department. He does a pretty good job leading Columbo astray, but there are a number of complications he has to deal with. For one, the cigar cutting is gone, vanished along with the victim's cat, who Columbo tasked Deputy Floyd with recovering. Another is that Clifford wasn't lying about his alibi, as he is on CCTV buying chapstick at a grocery store nowhere close to the victim's house. But they still have enough evidence to take before the grand jury, and Calvin is going to be indicted. Before then, Columbo wants to have another conversation with Kathleen, and he wants Patrick there for some reason. They meet at Barney's, Columbo's favorite restaurant, and before they can get started, Patrick pushes sugar towards her, and Columbo's mind is completely blown. He needs to go to the washroom about it, and continues to be bowled over when Patrick knows that Kathleen is a passenger princess and needs to sit in the front seat. He absolutely cannot believe it. These events are so shocking and revelatory that we need to spend the last 5 minutes of the movie explaining them to us, even though it seems pretty obvious they realize that these two know each other. We got it. We figured it out. Have a little more faith in us. Come on, we aren't all Barney. Anyway, he tricks them into thinking they turned on each other, and the whole thing is unraveled, and I assume they are going to jail. Also, Clifford uses a wedge cutter for a cigar, so even the planted evidence doesn't make sense. He even offers one to Columbo, but Columbo doesn't like it. Not a huge fan of change, that Columbo guy. He's still driving his shitty-ass car. This asshole, Hugh, just killed his wife during an argument, and his first thought is to go to a police commissioner buddy, Mark, who is busy playing backgammon for money. Did people do this? Has anyone lost their ass over a game of backgammon? Seems embarrassing. Our commissioner friend is more than willing to cover up this crime, making it look like a botched robbery, including providing an eyewitness report and holding a press conference about bringing this killer to justice. This includes increasing patrols in the rich neighborhood, including hourly helicopter flybys. This is all part of his master plan to kill his wife because he's tired of her giving her money away to ex-cons. He wants that money. He drowns her in the bathtub, then visits Hugh at his wife's funeral to inform him that it's time to return the favor and give him a plausible alibi for his murder. He has Hugh toss his dead wife into the pool, while Mark descends from on high in a helicopter to try and save her, weeping and crying. It is very cowboy, very dramatic, and he's really playing to the balcony. Unfortunately, Columbo, who's been noticing a lot of inconsistencies with these deaths, mostly that Mark doesn't understand women, obviously, and both corpses are found dead in clothing they would not plausibly be wearing. He's also able to track down that Hugh's wife was having an affair with a car salesman who tried to call her the night of the murder and got no answer, destroying Hugh's alibi. He takes his concerns to the police commissioner, who informs him that Columbo will concentrate exclusively on the burglary angle of these murders. Columbo is in a spot now because he's pretty sure Mark is behind it all, but he can't very well go to another police boss about this because chain of command and all that bullshit. So he needs to do a big trick, and that starts with tracking down the actual guy who was burglarizing that neighborhood, old Artie Jessup. He hates it on the outside. There's this terrible woman who keeps following around and asking him to go shopping, but he's not going to go down for these murders, no sir. Columbo isn't here for that, he just needs a favor, get the ball rolling. So Jessup calls Hugh and tells him he knows about the murder and wants cash, otherwise he's going to the police. Hugh, of course, runs to Mark about this, who decides to just be a cop about it and plant evidence of the robbery in Jessup's apartment. Then he sends the goon squad to bring him in, while Columbo is there to protest that this is a bad idea. Mark is confident, though. He's going to go to Jessup's apartment right now and pretend to look for stolen goods while Columbo lays out how he knows Mark did the murders. So Mark fires Columbo.
You just lost your badge, my friend.
The stolen jewelry is discovered, and they bring Jessup in to rub it in his face, when the trick is revealed.
Hey, I don't even live here.
What?
Columbo had switched out the address on the file, so Mark planted evidence at the wrong house. This was all part of the plan, but there's something that bugs me about this, and that is we are led to believe that Columbo lives here. Damn, Columbo, you live like this? You were a famous homicide lieutenant. The only reason you're here is because Mark knew you were the best on the force, and you're slumming in this studio apartment? You have a wife. Her family is over all the time. You were in the army. You should have a GI Bill house in the suburbs. What's with all these tiny bottles on your table? Why did you need to show the police commissioner your underwear?
These are my shirts. That's my underwear.
Does this tale take place after season 2 of Mrs. Columbo when I got divorced off screen? The most trouble Columbo ever got in with the law was when some guys came up to him in the park where he was flirting with some little girls, very awkwardly guide him to this train, stole his hot dog, and had the head of the CIA tell him to immediately stop his investigation as his prime suspect was one of their operatives. Mind, he does not stop the investigation. He gets a copy of a speech and some grapes from this Italian man to prove that the double agent couldn't have written it when he said he did. Let's back up and try to figure this one out, because I've watched this one a few times and I'm still not entirely sure what's going on. I understand this is the point, because we are referencing The Prisoner, a seminal work of spy fiction created by the star of this movie, Patrick McGoohan. I don't know how to feel about this guy, because he's a good actor, but not a very good director. Since he's just acting in this one, he's enjoyable to watch. His performance works as an effete spy who is always spinning wheels within wheels. He's playing Nelson Brenner, also known as Colorado, a probable double agent who has called Leslie Nielsen, or Geronimo, to the amusement park to do a job for him, trying to get their hands on some microfilm with naval code on them from some weirdo named Dr. Steinmetz, who wants to set up a drop. He sends Geronimo to a bar by the pier to pretend a cigarette machine is broken and steal 60 cents from the bartender and match a broken poker chip with this guy. He comes out of the pier and negotiates the price of the microfilm, $350K, which they bargained out to $300K so they can both skim some money off it. Then Nelson comes out of the shadows and kills him with a tire iron. Columbo is there to wonder why the mugger took off his jacket, then leers at this woman in a really uncomfortable way. Cannot take her eyes off her. I know this is supposed to be charming, but it's really disarming. He's usually very timid about near-naked women, always blushing and covering his eyes, but I guess he figures she's in public, so it's perfectly fine to stare at her the entire time he's there, not even paying attention to the witness, then in the end concludes that she's shy? Get the fuck out of here, Columbo. The waitress is not flirting with you. It's just her job. For some reason. Bars in Columbo, man. They always have a weird gimmick. He does some detective work and goes to the amusement park, walking around and harshing everyone's vibe by telling them he's a cop, going over the Polaroid negatives while standing too close to this lady to discover his victim talking to Nelson Brenner, learning that this guy paid $20 for his photo and the negative. Very sus behavior. He tracks him down and discovers that he lives a very privileged life, a speechwriter who lives in a private manor that is just having a chill party with foreign dignitaries. This guy can speak so many languages, you guys. He's so sophisticated and cool. We spend so much time walking around this guy's house, looking at his wall of certificates. He plays backgammon and mahjong for money. I guess it's something rich people did. And yet, he finds the whole thing rather boring. All his adventures just stuff he did. Stuff he has to keep doing to stay alive. Such as the scene that hints at his motive for killing Geronimo, which makes the thing even more confusing. When the low-level criminal that was working with Steinmetz gets a call from him to come meet him out in the woods, so they talk over what Melville should do now that he has Columbo asking him questions.
I'm talking about heat from some heavy little dude named Columbo.
Steinmetz tells him to relax, it'll be fine, the information market can be dangerous. Now, take this car to another location. Melville drives away, pleased as punch is getting paid, and then Steinmetz explodes the car a little, then heads to a different car and peels off his face to reveal it's Nelson Brenner. He was Steinmetz all along. This just raises further questions. Was there ever even microfilm for sale, or was it all a setup to get Geronimo alone? What's with all the subterfuge? Yes, this particular part was to frame the fictional Steinmetz as the murderer of Leslie Nielsen, but why did he want to murder him in the first place? Was it because he was supposed to be dead, and he knows Nelson is a double agent, and the director was intentionally keeping Geronimo's alive status from him? I think I figured it out, guys. He needed Geronimo out of the picture for spy reasons. I talked it through and I remember the dialogue. I only had to watch the movie 4 times before I got it. Anyway, yeah, Columbo gets him by proving he could not have written his speech when he claims he did because he mentioned the Chinese pulling out of the Olympics, news that hadn't broken until the morning, so his alibi is gone and he's impressed enough to give up, mainly because the movie is almost over. Columbo uses his powers on him to get him to confess. He's got enough clues to force a confession. I do not know why he gives up here. Columbo shouldn't even be here. The director of the CIA told him to back off. I guess it's the kinship Nelson feels with Columbo, respecting him for being able to see through all of his artifices. So impressed that he can't fool him with any amount of subterfuge. He was so confident that he had him with that stupid turn back the clock so it chimes during a speech dictation gambit that makes him realize he's got. Columbo will find something to break his story. He already knows Nelson is Steinmetz. He's done. Time to be sent to the island or whatever happens on the prisoner. I tried the first episode years ago, and it didn't grab me. It was just unanswerable question after another. I've seen Lost, thanks. No disrespect, I just find spy stuff so boring. The motivations never make any sense. Everyone is always double-crossing everyone. It's dull. I'm not trying to start a fight. In the end, there are no consequences for Columbo. It doesn't matter who he pisses off, the brass will always forget about it and he will be restored to his usual place, appearing out of nowhere to exact justice against those who try to escape it. Very fake-coded, you've seen the memes. There is really no force that can stop him, because that's the point. He's a detective, he's got to figure it out. You would not watch a mystery where they don't. Also, I didn't mention Columbo Cries Wolf, because that's not a Columbo, and the copyright robots are real jerks about that particular episode. Go watch my vid on the not Columbos about it, I think that one's pretty funny. New year, new outro. I want to keep my schedule flexible, I've got a job, so instead I'll just say to hang in there, keep the spirit of Columbo in your heart, dictated to the truth, and holding rich assholes accountable. Bye.